Hello and welcome to this short discussion video that will look at the importance of leadership in relation to change management. Particularly the following areas will be covered. So we'll look at an introduction and kind of an overarching term of what leadership actually is. I have a look at leadership styles and then a bit of looking particularly at leadership in relation to change management itself. So, the term leadership itself, then. Well, leadership is about creating opportunities. It's about providing a vision to believe in and with strategic alignment. Management is reacting to situations about enforcing organisational rules. And that is the important first step in this session. So the terms leadership and management are used interchangeably in the literature, but they are two very different principles. So the difficulty arises in the definitive definition of that term leadership. Now, some definitions about leadership are as a directive role, while others define leadership as a social process. So, for example, just to highlight two of the many definitions of leadership, the first one comes from Stockdale, way back in 1982, who defined leadership as the process of influencing the activities of an organised group in its efforts towards goal setting and goal achievement. Northouse, slightly later in 2007, defined leadership as a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. Now, either one of those definitions is perfectly acceptable, and you can bring a number of definitions of leadership into your assignment. But what is safe to say is that leadership is a term without a clear definition. So Stockdale stated that there are almost as many different definitions of leadership as there are people who have actually attempted to define the concept of leadership. What we can say for certain is that globalization has transformed the world into a global playing field where organizations are always antagonistic and competing with one another. And as a result, well, organizations have to create new beneficial operational ways in conducting their business. So, in this situation, leadership has become an essential component for a successful change in any organization in order to have those ever contentious competition in that global marketplace. So, therefore, change leadership, well, that's all about directing and managing the stages of change, as well as the sentiments connected with those stages. So, change leadership needs leaders and the cooperation of the organisation altogether to discourse on beliefs and mindsets that help people to develop the practices and behaviours that can support them to become accustomed to change. Now, on the contrary to change management, which is considered to be an outside in process with a concentration on structures, systems, and processes, change leadership is an inside out component. So that's about meeting the challenge of change. And that is about mobilizing people in the change process and making them to be committed all throughout the face of uncertainties and fears. And to enhance organizational performance, companies must be skilled at planning, implementing, and managing change, not just as a strange event, but as a continuous process in a continuing manner. And it's been acknowledged that the role that leaders normally play in the management of strategic change in organisation, and in addition, how they navigate the organisation towards the accomplishment of these goals that they set through the use of leadership skills. Now, organisations nowadays have been obligated because of rapid technology improvements, high anticipation of customers, and ever changing market situations to continually re examine and have another look at how they work and to comprehend, to embrace, and carry out change in their businesses in relation to the changing trends in the market. Now, organisational change is a call of the day and a necessity for survival of many organisations. Organisations these days soundly know the prominence of a problem and are always in a state of preparedness for now and for the future in order to get the level of maintainable success. But nevertheless, organisational change is likewise a very difficult and perplexing process, along with all the consequences and importance. So, globalization, technology development, the emerging competition, the ever changing environment, the economic conditions, they've all compelled companies to carry out change as a probability to survival and continue to stay competitive in the market. And as such, leadership styles have come into play given current market conditions. The external factors like change customers' needs and the pandemic itself, and the internal factors like organisational culture, which shine the light on leadership styles adopted and sometimes required given a particular situation. And these are what we'll explore on the next slide here. So outlined on this slide is some leadership styles. Not a comprehensive list by any shape or form. There are many more leadership styles that you can refer to and bring into your assignment. What we can say is that organisations today require effective leaders that can comprehend the difficulties of the fast changing global environment. So, if we look at the authoritarian leader, here the leader has little conviction or self-confidence in his or her subordinates. Therefore, he or she manages employees, and the employees are given a situation, but the fear of a punishment tactic is very much the motivational factor. In this type of leadership, where the head of the organisation takes control of all the decisions and the command processes and the tasks that the organisation has to undertake. So, authoritarian leadership is deeply dependent on discipline within an organisation. Transformational leadership. Well, in transformational leadership, we figure out the needs of people and develop ways of addressing them. It's concerned with meeting long-term goals without compromising the human values and the principles. Transformational leadership considers the value of profit as the basis of growth. It's proactive. It focuses more on missions and strategies for achieving them. It makes full use of human resources and identifies and develops new talent. Transformational leaders recognise the output of people and reward them for their noteworthy contributions, and they release human potential. At the laissez-faire leadership style, well, that's the opposite of the authoritarian leadership style in many ways. A laissez-faire leader tolerates followers to have complete freedom in making decisions that concern their work and how that work has to be completed. The leader takes on the responsibility of providing the resources required by the employees, but ultimately how the work and the task is undertaken is very much in the hands of those employees. A servant leadership is one who mainly shows concern for his or her team members and their needs. Servant leaders believe that meeting the needs of employees will lead to the success of the organisation. And such leaders facilitate the sharing of ideas within the organisation and offer support to employees to actualise their goals. And servant leaders facilitate the involvement of employees in the decision-making process. Democratic leaders, well, as the name implies, is an open and clear concept of leading where the decision-making powers are distributed amongst the members of the organisation. And contributions from all members are valued, and their inputs in the formation of the vision of the organisation, well, that's encouraged. What I want to kind of focus the attention on now is the PDSA model, the Deming cycle. So I mentioned at the start that the term leaderships and management are often used interchangeably. And Kotter argued that they are two separate functions. So it could be argued that the focus for what these functions do naturally, organically materialize when there is a requirement for change within complex systems and therefore a requirement for change management. Now, one effective change management model is Edward Deming's cycle. It's also known as the Short cycle. And the cycle is a model for learning and change management. So the Deming cycle can appear somewhat cumbersome and complex. But in essence, however, it is simply a cycle for identifying, for describing, and providing structure for a natural process whereby groups or teams initiate change within a system. Now, using this explicit framework for managing a change program ensures that you do not drift from the initial objective, that you have actual achievable measures that are valid and will show improvement if improvement, in fact, is actually realised. It also provides the evidence that an approach works. So formalising your change management in this way enables you to sell your intervention to others. Factoring in the leaderships that were outlined in the previous slide, and which will adopt giving the situation presented, well, that's an important factor in successful change management initiatives. So very briefly here, the cycle begins at the plan step. This involves identifying a goal or a purpose, formulating a theory, defining success matrices, and putting a plan into action. And these activities are followed by the do step, in which the components of the plan are implemented, such as making a product. Next comes the study step, the check step, where outcomes are monitored to test the validity of the plan for signs of progress or problems and areas for improvement. And finally, the act step closes the cycle. It integrates the learning generated by that entire process, which can be used to adjust the goal and change methods or broaden the learning experience. Now, these 4 steps can be represented over and over again as part of a never-ending cycle of continuous learning and improvement. Now, I highlighted this cycle as this approach is at the heart of continuous improvement, sometimes also known as Kaizen. Okay, Kaizen. And you can adopt this approach if, for example, you're working on a project that aims to tackle a problem of, say, for example, something very simple like an untidy workspace. That would be the plan stage. Okay, we've identified that plan, an untidy workspace. To put this Deming cycle into action then, at the do stage, you could complete a standard operating procedure, so a constant way of working, and then that document is used by teams to use for improving the work environment. At the check stage, the process confirmation would be performed regularly to review against that agreed standard operating procedure. And then at the act stage, issues would be highlighted, causes would be understood and addressed, issues would be resolved, and the revised issues would be then incorporated into that standard operating procedure guideline. So that's just a very simple example of where you could use this cycle as part of a project. And in that example, you can explore a range of solutions to a problem by implementing them incrementally in a controlled way and assessing the impact on a small scale. And as I previously highlighted, that can be repeated again and again as a never-ending cycle for continuous learning and improvement. Kaizen. Okay. Now, if you want to read more about this topic, then a good recommended text is The Managing Change by Bernard Burntext, with multiple copies available in the library. Another useful text in this area also includes the Harrison textbook, Leadership Theory and Research, A Critical Approach to New and Existing Paradigms, and the Gerard Cole text, Management Theory and Practice. And again, both of these textbooks are available in the library. And if you need any additional assistance in this area, then your appointed link tutor will be more than happy to offer additional help and guidance.